Good day. My name is Muponya Andreas, a third-year student doing education in secondary level. Now, I'm going to present to you about the socialization function of education. Now, whereas in this theme, we'll be going to look at the three aspects, whereby in the first slide, we're going to talk more on the concept of socialization. And then secondly, we are going also to look at the various socialization agents. And then thirdly or lastly, we are going to look at the different approaches of socialization. Now, without wasting time, the concept of socialization. Now, what is required from us here is just to understand the philosophies or the ideas or the findings of different scholars based on what socialization is. Now, with socialization, here is a practical example given to us, which can help us to understand better about what socialization is. That the human infant or the baby are born without any culture. They must be transformed by their parents, teachers, and others into cultural and social adapt animals. Now, this is to say that when the baby is born, they do not know or they don't have words of which they can use in order to ask for something or to thank or to give thanks to something being given. Okay, now it has to be someone's responsibility which should be carried out in order to tell the child or the children that this is the way on how you should behave to your friends, and this is the way on how you should behave to you, us as your parents, and to everyone above your age. And also, here is the way on how you are going to say when someone happens to give you something. But say for instance, maybe when you are given a sweet or a biscuit, now what you need to say is thank you. Now that process that you are teaching now your children or your child on how to go about thanking others and behaving with others. Now that process itself is what we call as socialization. Okay. Now what we need to know here is that this socialization, this is something which is not acquired or acquired from your parents, or it's not a gene thing, but this is something which can be learned. Okay. Now we have a very good definition of what socialization is. It says the term socialization refers to the process of interaction through which the growing individual, in this case we are now talking of the children now, learns how, the habits of behaviors, attitude, values, and beliefs of the social groups in which he has to be, he has been born. Okay. Now the concept still continues. Here now it talks on the answers or given by the Kimberly Youngs. Now here it says socialization is the process of inducting the individual into the social and cultural world, of making him a particular member in the society and its various group, and inducting him to accept the norms and values of the society. Okay. Here it says socialization is an individualized process. Okay. What does it mean with an individualized process? Here it says because it arises that each and every children is different from the other. Now, like Stephen Howard Gardner says, who talks about the multiple intelligence, it says every one is unique to the other. Now that is why it says now socialization it also differs, or it's differed from one person to another, simply because of what we'll be talking as we are going to discuss more on the agents. Okay. Now it also says that the stages of socialization now. Now what we need to know that socialization, or this process now of acquiring ideas, are also divided, or it also occurs in different category or levels to say. Now there is what we call as primary socialization. Now this primary socialization, this is socialization which occurs or which happens from birth through to the adolescent. Now what this means is that when the person is born as a baby, now what will happen is that The baby, when the baby is hungry, the baby will just cry. When the baby needs water to drink, it will just cry. It will not say any word. But as it grows, now you as a parent, or you as a nanny, or whosoever who's going to stay with the baby, what you'll be doing that you will now be familiarizing the baby with the concept, I mean with the growing children with the concept that, okay, if you are hungry, you don't need to cry. You need to say, I'm hungry, give me something to eat. Or if you are hungry, you need to go in the kitchen and look for anything that is consumable that you can eat. Now that process which is happening in socialization, now it's in the primary stage, now in the first stage. Okay, and then we also have what we call as a secondary socialization. Now secondary socialization, it occurs throughout our lives as we encounter groups and situations that were not part of the primary socialization. Okay, now let's say with primary socialization, it happens before a children happens to go or to be enrolled at a certain school. Now with secondary socialization, now here the child has been enrolled now. Let's say maybe she or he is now in grade 1. Now what will happen is that when the child is in classroom, they do not know that when a teacher happens to step into the class, what they need to do is that they all have to stand on their feet. Now, standing on their feet, it's not something, I mean, it's something which was not taught in the primary socialization or in the first stage. Okay, now it's something which is just being taught in the secondary stage because it was not in the first primary stage. Okay, now that's now the way on how the learner, I mean the child, also adapt to that way of when they see the teacher walking into the class, they all stand up waiting to be greeted. Now that is what we call as socialization, and that happens as they are now in groups, now like in a classroom now. Okay, and there's also what we call as group socialization. Now here, now in this level, now we're going to look at not in school now. Let's say maybe they are now pursuing their schools at, their education at a tertiary level, whereby learners meet different people from different family backgrounds and family, and ethnics. Okay, now here it says group socialization occurs throughout all stages of life. For example, peer group influence how one speaks and dresses. Now let's take a good example of those that are at tertiary. Now what happened is that when they were at home, it's fine, they can dress or they can be however that they want to be. Okay, but now as they reach the university level, now they'll come to find out that, okay, they'll be exposed to things such as, no, there's what we call as old-fashioned dressing and the trend dressing or the new style. Okay, now what will happen is that this individual will then adapt to the new dressing code or the fashion one now, abandoning the previous one. Okay, and there's also what we call as organizational socialization. Now here we are now looking at a level whereby the person has now completed his or her studies from tertiary. Now the person is going outside now in the real world, whereby the person will now be employed in a certain working area. Now in that level, that is now what we call as organizational socialization, whereby these children, this is no longer a children, but now this person also going to form part of the management. Now when this person also forms part of the management, what will happen is that the person will now try to familiarize him or herself with now the norms and the values or the practices of the business. Now say for instance, maybe what will happen is that now this person will now be able to link himself to punctuality and also to the dressing code of the business and all that. Now that's what we call as organizational socialization. Okay, and also there's what we call as anticipatory socialization. Now with anticipatory socialization, this is a type of socialization which only appears or occurs in some people but not in others. Okay, now with anticipatory socialization, it says it's largely self-directed. Now what is meant with self-directed? This, it's like a person has to do it him or herself, but not to has to be taught by anyone that, okay, do A, do A, B, do C. Now we are going to use an example of which is going to summarize the definition here. Now an example of anticipatory socialization Here it says, okay, say for instance, maybe we're going to use an example of Martha and Queen. Now, what will happen is that Martha was never, or she never ever conceived. It's now her first time of conceiving a child, I mean, pregnancy. Whereas Queen, she already conceived, or let's say she's now having two children now. Okay. Now, what will happen is that when Martha conceives or when she becomes pregnant, what will happen is that she will seek for help. Now she will now has to look for someone who was already in that situation of the pregnant thing, so that she will also acquire the what now the procedures and and what is to be expected. Now Martha will now consult Queen, whereby she will ask different type of questions. Okay, what do I need from here? Okay, and from here now what is next and all that. Now Queen will explain now to Martha that okay, I was also pregnant. Now what you need to do, you just need to what to eat the healthy diet food, okay, and you must also exercise and all that. Now that way, it's now what we call as anticipatory socialization. Now by definition, it says it's largely self-directed and refers to the steps one takes to prepare for a new role. In that case, we are now talking of a mother now preparing for a new role now to become a mother, okay, or position or occupation. This may involve seeking guidance from people who have previously served in the role. Just like how we said that Martha is now seeking for help now from Queen who has previously been in that situation. Okay. And it also continues whereby it says there's what we call as forced socialization. Now, with forced socialization, this says it takes place in institutions such as prisons, mental hospital, military units, and some boarding schools. Okay. Now, here with forced socialization, we are only going to use military schools in which will now demonstrate everything now under this socialization. Okay, with military schools, in the military, forced socialization aims to create an entirely new identity for the individual. Now, as we are going to discuss further, we'll also come to find out what we call as legal socialization. Now, legal socialization and forced socialization, this acts in a very same way. Okay, now with forced socialization, what is trying to tell us that here, now we are going now to use an example of soldiers now, like what is happening now. Now soldiers, when they go for training, they will be trained in a very harsh way to ensure that when they go outside, they need to be law enforcers. Now when someone is not responding to the law, now what will happen is that these soldiers, they'll now beat whosoever who does not adhere to the law. Now, say for instance, maybe this soldier, before this soldier went for training, he was someone, let's say maybe she believed or she was a Christian. Now, what will happen is that the Christianity thing will be now taken away to ensure that he has no, he or she should not have mercy. Now, if it's beating, he just have to beat. You see, now it like they will now create a hatred. Now that process of forming new identity, it's now what we call as forced. The person never wanted to be somebody with harsh behaviors, but then due to the training and all that, now the person will also transform. That is what we call as forced socialization. Okay, and there are what we call as socialization agents. Now here we need to listen carefully. Now socialization agents, you cannot separate the agents away from what we discussed earlier on. Okay, now the agents, here it says family, the daycare, the social class, friends or peer group, language, political parties, nationalism, religion, legal system, educational institution, and mass media. Okay, now here we are going now to break them one by one. Okay, now let's start with the family. Um, now look at how each agent is influenced by the type of approach. Okay, now with the family is the most important agent of socialization. Why? Because the family is the center of the child's life, as infants are totally dependent on others. Now we all know that when as the child is growing, it's parents' responsibility to tame the child that okay, this is the way on how she or he has to behave within the society to ensure that no problem is brought about. Okay, now it says the family also shoulders the task of teaching children cultural values and attitudes about themselves and others. Now, in other words to say, the families plays an important role in a children or in a person's life simply because they form part of his or her personality. Okay. The family also it trains the younger generation in such a way that they take the adult roles in proper manner. Now, what we really mean here is that the family plays an important role in socialization. Okay, now that is why we say the agents cannot be separated from the socialization. Okay, now because as we see, we have now we have now the children and the socialization. Now, in the middle there has to be someone responsible to ensure that this child is now linked to the socialization in a proper and acceptable manner. Now, the family is now responsible to ensure that this child is associated with socialization in an acceptable way, simply because the family will now train the younger generation or will train the child in such a way that it can take the adult roles in a proper manner. Okay, it also says the family also use both reward and punishment to imbibe what is socially required from a child. Okay, um, what is trying to tell us here is that now you as a parent, now you want now to mold your children in a way that she must be someone in a good with good attitudes in the society. Now you wouldn't like your children to fight, you wouldn't like them to insult others, steal and do all that. Now what you'll be doing as the parent is that when your child happens to insult, or if your child happens to steal something from somewhere, now what you'll be doing that you are now going to force punishments now. Now, there are those that we call as positive reinforcement. Now, positive reinforcement, now say for instance, maybe your child happens to steal something from somewhere. Now, when your child comes, you're now going to tell him or her that, okay, you have stole someone's property. Now, what's going to happen is that I'm not going to give you food unless you are going to return back what you have stolen and say sorry. Now, if your child happens to return it back and your child says sorry and then come back and then that's positive reinforcement. It means it has worked out. Okay, that's why it says it's now family's responsibility to ensure that now the children are molded in a way that they can be able to carry their personality into their adulthood. Okay, there are what we call as the daycare. Now, some we may come across of what we call as the daycare center. We may have a working father and a working mother who are having a child or a kid. Now, what will happen is that this working father and the working mother they will not have enough time to be with their child or yes, to be with their children. Now, what will happen is that they will now take this kid to the daycare center, whereby this kid or with these children will be taken care of, and at the end of the day, parents they will now pay those guys now responsible to them. Now, here it says the daycare are informal arrangements ne, at the home of a neighbor, large nurseries run by school, churches, charities, corporation, and so forth. Okay, now the aim of this daycare is assisting full-time working mothers and fathers. Now, how does this daycare is linked now to the socialization? Now, You need to understand that the child has to be taught on ways on how to ask for something. Now, what will happen is that whatever that the child is going to be taught at the daycare center, it's what the child or the kid is going to associate or to accommodate in his or her mind. In other ways to say, um, um, now the child or the children or the kid will then take whatever that is being taught to her. Okay, and we also have what we call a social class. Now, this social class, this is basically entails or involves on how parents raise their children relative to their social class or to their family um, social level, what they have and what they do not have. Okay, now here it says um, lower class parents emphasize or explains more or involves more conformity in their children because they experience conformity in the day-to-day activity. Okay, whereas the middle class parents are more likely to emphasize creativity and self-reliance. Now, this says that um, children with children under the lower class, what will happen is that their socialization is also affected somewhere somehow. Okay, whereas those children in the middle class or the higher class social class, now with them they are always advanced simply because their parents will provide everything that they need. They can be bought cell phone laptops of which they can use in order for them now to practice what we call mass media, and an aspect of which we are going to discuss as we go further. And also there are going to be more creativity. They will know on how to use like smartphones now, digital electronic devices and so forth, compared to the lower class children. Okay, now here what we call as peer group of friends. Now peer group, by definition, it says this means a group in which the members share some common characteristic such as age or sex and etc. Now what it means, that let's take an example of maybe okay grade fives. Now what will happen is that in that class of grade 5, now it will be observed that almost they are all of the same age. Now with them, or they can now call in themselves as peers or as friends simply because they are of the same age. Okay, now what will happen is that these children's um what will happen is that in these children, they will come into contact, they have to play together. If someone has food, they share the food and all that. Now what will happen is that as they are interacting, sharing something which they are using to play with or sharing food, now it's also contributing to their socialization aspect. What will happen is that the one who's sharing his or her things to the others, now um, she or he is able to develop a caring uh, interpersonality or interpersonal. Okay, um, here it says the peer group of friends influenced by their peers when it comes to dress, musical flirts, cheating, and drug use. Yes, we have a concept of which we say as peer pressure. Now, what happens is that peers, here now they come to acclimatize themselves to something which they have never seen. Say, for instance, learner A and learner B, they are all in grade 5. Learner A used to smoke cigarettes simply because maybe one of his parents or brothers also smoked a cigarette. Now, as this learner A comes to school, now he will come to tell or do it in front of learner B. Now, when learner B sees learner A smoking and doing all that, what will happen is that this learner B will also try to do the very same thing of which learner A is doing. Now, that is what we call as peer pressure. Now, it's happening simply because they are together, they are seeing each other, or they are socializing together. Okay, that's why we say as peers also contributes to socialization. Okay, there's what we call language. Now, language, this is something which can be taught in the primary socialization or secondary socialization. Language, it can be taught primary is with at home now with parents. They'll now tell their child or their children that, okay, if you want to talk to someone or to an elder, you must speak in this way, not in a louder voice or not in a slower voice, but just there. Okay. Whereas under secondary socialization, they will also be taught on the type of vocabularies now to use when they are with their friends, what type of words to use, and when they are with their parents, what type of language or grammars to use, and when they are talking to the teacher, what type of grammars also to use. That's why here it says this approach can also be acquired through various agents such as school, we have mentioned school, teachers, family at home, and the community now at large. Okay, now it says people learn to socialize differently depending on the specific language and culture in which they live. Okay, specific example of this is code switching. This is where immigrant children learn to behave in accordance with the languages used in their lives. Now, say for instance, we have what we call the black community and the white community. Now, what is believed that with the white or with the white community or the white people, what is believed that if they want to communicate, why they use either smartphones or laptops and all that. Now, what they like doing is partying every time. Whereas with the black community, what they always do is that they don't make use of cell phones simply because parents will come in and say no, we don't like you to have or to use a cell phone in the early age simply because you may fall pregnant or you become a robbery thief and all that. Okay, that is why we say the language also influence. That's why we see those English speaking people, their socialization is different and at least advanced. Whereas um, the black people, they are uh, in accordance with their language, their socialization is also low and sometimes it's compromised because you will find out that okay, a 10-year-old black person do not know how does not know how to use a cell phone, whereas a 9 or 8 year white person knows on how to use a flat screen or know how to use a laptop and all that. Okay. There is socialization type which we call as political party. I mean the agent political party. Now political parties, we all know what are political parties. You can name them: the SWAPO, the RDP, the NUDO, the list goes. Okay. Now here it says every society tries to influence how people grow up. Now the way in which political parties influence socialization is that they will be told that okay, say for instance, if you belong to political party A, now when you happens to be or to find yourself in the midst of people, at least try to talk more of good things of our party. Now it's like the political party, it's now the one responsible or telling you on how you are going to socialize with other people. Okay. Here also it says children tend to believe that their own country and language are superior to others. This bond may be the most critical socialization feature relating to the political life of the nation. Okay. Um, there is also what we call as a religion. Religion also contributes to the socialization. Okay. How? Here it says religion has been an important factor in society. It is responsible in molding people's beliefs and ways of life. Okay. It says you know there are different type of religion. We have Christianity, we have the Muslims, and the list goes. Okay. Now, what happened is that people will now be taught, okay, in our religion, we go to church on a Sunday and we pray to God. And here is how we pray, and this is what we do when we are praying. Maybe we kneel down, we do A, we do B, we do C, and all that. Now, the child, or as a growing child, or as a growing person, what will happen is that this person will also try to acclimatize him or herself into that process of which is religion. Okay, that's why we say religion also plays an important part of socialization. Okay, there is what we call as institution, educational institution. Educational institution also takes part, or parties, or it also contributes to socialization. Now, before we help us to look at on how does educational institution plays an important role, or how is it involved with socialization. Now it says here, it is an educational institution is the education, is the culture. The culture is formally transmitted and acquired under educational institution. The educational institution not only help the growing child in learning, okay, but in learning other subjects, but also instill the concept of time, discipline, teamwork, cooperation, and competition. But what will happen is that when the person or when the child grow, this person or with these children will not know what a teamwork is, will not know what discipline is, will not know what are subjects and how do they differ from each other. Now, what will happen is that when these children will be enrolled in school, the educational institution, what will it do is that it will now start to mold these growing children, or this growing child, that okay, you must behave in a very good way. When you are being called by the teacher, you need to do this. When the teacher is talking, you need to listen. When the teacher is asking, and all that. Now, all those, it's now social. The child is being socialized into different type of aspects by the teacher, who falls under educational institution. Okay. The educational institution will also try to inform the learner that through the means of reward and punishment, the desired pattern is also reinforced. Educational institution also continues here. It says educational institution is a very important socializer and the means by which individual acquires social norms and values. Values of achievement, civic ideals, solidarity and group loyalty, etc. Beyond those which are available for learning in there and other groups. Educational institution is also teach children the importance of working for reward. Like you work and you study for you to pass the test. After passing the test, you also study for you to pass your semester exams, and also for you to pass your NDA exam, for you to go into the another grade. Okay. There's what we call as mass media. Now, mass media also contributes or plays an important role with socialization. Now, mass media, these are the means for delivering impersonal communication directed to a vast or to an enormous audience. Now, an example of this mass media. Now, this can be books, magazines, radios, televisions, movies. Not forget about the YouTube, WhatsApp, and all that. Now, those, they also plays an important role. How do they do that? It plays an important role in the transmission of information and messages which influence the personality of an individual to a greater extent. Okay, say for instance, we all know social media. Now, what happens is that people now will then now be wearing very nice clothes, and then from there they will capture or they take selfies of themselves, they post on Facebook. Now as they post on Facebook, someone out there, when this person will be viewing on this picture, say for instance maybe this picture could be Chris Brown's pic or Nicki Minaj, the list goes forth. Now what will happen is that the person, when this person will look at the picture which was posted, the dressing style, it will now enables the person to love him or her more, to an extent that the person will also tries to go into the shop and buy the very similar clothes or the very similar style of which the person posted. Now to also wear, she will also wear the very same thing, take a very nice pic and upload it outside there. Now what will happen is that through social media, people are also getting ways on how to dress, ways on how to do things, and all that. Okay, that is why we say mass media, um, it's a communication directed to a vast audience. Okay, global or worldwide. And it says communication media has an important effect in encouraging individuals to support the existing norms and value, or oppose or change them. Say for instance, back in the days, there were no television. What was happening that people were sitting around the fire. But now what is happening that people are no longer sitting around the fire. If it's evening, they get into the sitting room, they start watching television. Now what is happening that to those that are still sitting around the fire, it's like they are now old fashioned. Now, the media now, be it Facebook or newspapers or whatsoever, now what it's doing is that um, it's also trying like to expose those that are not having televisions and all that, that at least they must also caught up with technology or with the world of today. That is why we say mass media, this is an important way because it changes tradition or how people must live. Back in the days, people were sitting around the fire, but now no one is doing that. They are all using now television. Okay, that is the result of mass media. In other words, to say, the mass media has changed the way of socialization. Okay, there's what we call as legal system. The legal system, this goes hand in hand with um, forced socialization. Now, the legal system here, the state is an authoritarian agency which makes laws for the people and lays down the modes of conduct expected of them. Okay, now here's a practical scenario of which I have brought about, which occurs, okay, the lockdown due to COVID-19. The people have compulsorily has to obey to this law that no one must um, walk around. If you happens to walk around, you need to wear a mask. Now, what is happening is that um, the state or the president has declared that people should wear mask. Anyone that will be found without a mask or without sanitizing or what forth, this person will be punished. Now, what will happen is that these people, whosoever who fail to adjust to this rule, accordance with the law of the state, now they will be punished. To those that are selling alcohol, the president said no one should sell alcohol during lockdown period. Now, whosoever that will be caught selling alcohol will be given a fine or will be punished. Now, that's what we call as a legal system. Now, that's why we say the legal system also, it also has an effect on the socialization. Okay, that is why we see. That is why we see now people back in days, people were now chilling at the bars. Yes, they go out like chilling outside on places such as lodges and all the jacuzzis and all that. But now it's no more, simply because of the legal system. That's why we say the legal system also has a say, or it also has an impact on socialization. It can improve socialization, it can slow down the socialization process, but the fact remains that it also has an effect. Okay. In conclusion, how can say socialization makes it possible for us people, or for us human, to fully function. Without socialization, we could not have our own society and culture. This is true. This is true. In order for a person to fit in a certain environment, a person has to be trained. Okay, this is the way on how you must behave. This is what you must do. This is what you must not do. Now, if the person do what is not expected, this person will be punished. The reason why this person will be punished simply because they want this person to be the person that they want to become. In other words, this person will be trained on how to socialize with others, on how to interact with others, on how to behave in a certain environment, and the list goes so forth. Okay. Thank you for thank you for paying attention. What I presented, all the notes, I got them from here. You can see the references are all here. Thank you very much.